Hello and welcome to YHTV's Meditation Madness. It is a moment just to take you out of the madness of the world and your mind and whatever it is you do. Right now, I would like to share with you a excerpt from a wonderful, wonderful speaker, Jonathan Foust. He was part of our faculty on our virtual world yoga and meditation conference here on Yoga Hub. And he is just magnificent, such a magnificent, captivating speaker. And this is something we really wanted to share with you because we hope to bring him back in 2014 to actually speak on our Meditation Madness series. And this is an excerpt from Immeasurable Happiness, Unlocking the Myths of Meditation. Enjoy.
Well, thank you so much. I'm delighted and I'm really honored to be here. This is really an exciting time.
So tell us about immeasurable happiness.
Yeah. Just as you said, who doesn't want to be happy? You know, we actually have that written into our Constitution, the pursuit of happiness. And really, when you really look at kind of the core teaching, it's from both the yoga tradition and the Buddhist tradition, there is this beautiful articulation of who we truly are. Who we truly are is imbued with happiness and imbued with peace and with joy and the sense of being free from suffering. When we strip away anxiety, when we strip away fear, this is what begins to emerge. And this is kind of the lure and the promise of meditation. A good friend of mine who is now a full-time yoga teacher told me how quite a few years ago he was working in the finance industry and was utterly miserable. He went to his therapist, who was also a meditation teacher, and he was describing how awful he felt. And his therapist said, you should learn to meditate. You'd feel better. So he thought, wow, okay. He started studying meditation, and as he took meditation into his practice, what he noticed was that he was feeling really depressed and feeling really angry and feeling bitter. All these really difficult emotions were coming to the surface. And he went back to his therapist and he said, "What the heck are you talking about? All I feel is like depressed and angry and bitter. You said I'd feel better." And his therapist said, "Yeah, you feel anger better, you feel bitterness better, you feel depression better." And that's kind of the paradox in the practice of meditation. As we focus on what it means to be happy, it's guaranteed that you will come in more intimate contact with everything that's between you and that. And having that understanding is a way that we can begin to dispel some of the myths of meditation. And what I'd like to do in our time here is to talk about some of the myths that we hold about meditation and talk about them a little bit and also explore a little bit through some guided practice.
Well, that sounds wonderful. I love that story. Can't we all relate to that? And I know the myths are so prevalent that there's a lot to learn and to be said about facing those myths and seeing the truth that's behind them. So great.
Absolutely. I teach a lot in corporations. I have been teaching at the World Bank for the last couple of years, and I've trained about 600 people in meditation. And oftentimes when I'm in a corporate setting, I'll have people close their eyes and I'll say, when you think about the word meditation, what words come to mind? And someone will call out, peace. Someone will call out, bliss. Someone else will call out, no thoughts. And then there'll be someone in the back of the room who's actually meditated. They'll have a little smile on their face and they'll say, pain, humiliation, and obsessive thinking.
That's more the truth of it, huh?
Yeah. So the first myth I'd like to talk about is the sense that there are bad meditations and good meditations. Oftentimes when someone will go into a meditation practice and they come out and they'll realize they just had nothing but thoughts and struggle, and they've had to call themselves back again and again to their point of concentration, to their anchor. Well, they'll call that a bad meditation. And they may have another meditation where they feel a greater sense of peace, a greater sense of ease. None of the thoughts have any Velcro. They just kind of slide right through, and they'll call that a good meditation. And what can be very, very helpful is to realize that the meditations where you have had to call your attention back again and again to your point of focus, actually, every time you wake up, lost in thought or caught in a mood, every time you wake up, that is a moment of celebration. You're actually strengthening what you could call the mindfulness muscle. And every time you wake up, you disidentify from that thought or that story, and you strengthen who you are as the observer, as the witness of your experience. So you could say that the meditations where you are struggling the most are the ones that are actually the best for you. These are the meditations that are strengthening your capacity to stay with all those fluctuating thoughts and moods and emotions.
So you think we're judging what's good based on how we feel about it? If it feels good, it was a good meditation. If it felt blissful and felt relaxed and effortless, it was good. That's what you think of the myth.
Yeah. It's like if you're out skating and you're skating against the wind and you're really having to push and the wind is really blustery and then you get to the end of the lake and you turn around and the wind is behind you and you're just being pushed. It's almost effortless. Well, was it bad to be going against the wind? Or were you perhaps getting stronger? Were you building some strength and building some skill? So that
sometimes we just get sick. Sometimes we just get sick of fighting against the wind, though.
Exactly.
If it goes on too long, that fighting can get.
Exactly.
We can call it bad.
Well, that's why I practice my favorite form of meditation, which is what I call lying down meditation. And sometimes we really need to take a break.
Yeah.
So one of the things when we really look at this sense of a bad meditation or a good meditation is recognizing the mind states that arise. And I wanted to mention these briefly because it's so important for beginning to hone our attention to recognize what's between us and feeling happy and feeling free. I oftentimes when I'm teaching in a corporation or with business people, I'll kind of mention these 5 mind states as the classic stress responses. That what happens in our mind when things don't go our way. And they just happen to correspond to this articulation, which was so beautifully put about 2,500 years ago in the Buddhist tradition. In kind of the classical terms, they're referred to as the obstacles or the hindrances. These are the 5 main mind states that when you're caught in these mind states, the one thing they have in common is that they occlude all other thoughts. They push out all other thoughts. So when things don't go our way, some of us will find ourselves caught in aversion. And aversion are all the different flavors of aversion have to do with ill will, with blame, with judgment, with anger, with hatred. And as we all know, when we're caught in anger, that sort of blind rage, we are so identified with that mind state that it pushes out all other thoughts. Kind of the opposite of aversion is being lost in craving, or what you could call that wanting mind. And this is when the mind goes off, when things aren't going your way, it goes off into fantasy. It goes off into planning, which is one of my favorite places to go. Mm-hmm. It'll go off into, those wonderful pornographic meditations that we've all experienced. We kind of get lost into sense pleasure and the sense of how happy we'll be when something magical happens out there, and we're completely disconnected from what's happening right now. So this sense of aversion and craving are really big, but the list goes on. When things don't go your way, many of us find ourselves caught in worry, in anxiety, in restlessness. If you've ever had that experience of kind of being on a hamster wheel, and you just can't get off the hamster wheel, the mind keeps coming back to the same issue over and over and over again. And some of us, when the going gets tough, we get lost in what is classically referred to as sloth and torpor, which sounds kind of like the name of a law firm. But sloth and torpor is the numbing that we kind of go into when we don't want to feel what's there. Sometimes sleepiness in meditation is a very strong biological indicator that you're depleted or exhausted. Sometimes it can be a very unconscious way that we tune out from the rawness of what we're feeling. Now, many of us at different times might eat just a little bit more food than what's required just to kind of numb ourselves a little bit. Or there's that sense if I just take a nap, maybe when I wake up, things will be different. And the fifth of these mind states is being caught in doubt. And when we're caught in doubt, we oftentimes have the feeling, I can't do this. This is too hard. Or if you're meditating in a group, a common thought is like, everyone else here is doing this perfectly, except for me. So we get lost in internal doubt, or we get lost in external doubt. Suddenly we get caught in this proliferation of thoughts. I made the wrong choices. I have the wrong partner. Am I in the right job? And when we're lost in doubt, we are truly paralyzed. So these 5 mind states, aversion, craving, wanting, restlessness and anxiety, sloth and torpor, and being caught in doubt. When we're caught in these states, we're truly trapped. We're paralyzed. Here's the good news.
I'm glad there's some good news. I was getting a little depressed there.
Yeah.
Because they're all so relatable. I mean, when you were talking about it, I think that there's not a human being on the earth that cannot say, oh yeah, I know that one, I know that one, I know that, and I know all 5 of those.
Yes, absolutely. And, and sometimes we have a favorite. You know how some people are kind of like outrage waiting to happen?
Yes, yes.
And some people are rejection and depression waiting to happen. And so we will sometimes we'll have sort of like our standard way that we go, but all of these are equally present in our experience. So what all traditions say is that when you can recognize the state, when you can name it, you've begun to sever your identification with it. Anger is a really good example. You know how when you're filled with anger, you know how much housework you can get done?
It's very productive.
Absolutely. It's emotion, it's energy in motion. But at some point we are identified with the anger, and then somehow magically we kind of recognize that the anger is moving through us. The shamanic traditions have a very powerful thing. The shamanic traditions say that if you can name a fear, you take its power away. When you can name anxiety, it doesn't mean it goes away, but you begin to sever your identification with it. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about a very specific modality, a very specific skillful means that you can use that can help you to very powerfully shift your identification to whatever's going on in your internal experience.
That'd be helpful, because when I think about naming it, I mean, sometimes there's so many disguises for anger, self-righteousness, someone else is wrong, or anger comes in so many different ways of looking at it.
Exactly. Yeah, there's so many flavors. And of course, what we find is like just below the anger, there's hurt. And just below that hurt, there can be a sense of shame. So when we begin to examine the emotions that arise, it's a very, very rich experience in this process of recognizing what's happening and then sensing what it means to allow, to just let it be is a very, very essential practice. And it gets a little more detailed than that. We'll cover that in a few moments. Okay. But I thought it might be interesting just to take like a little 2-minute reflection here.
Let's do that.
Yeah, so if you like, you can close your eyes. And you might like to just sense the breath. And as you feel the breath moving inside, you might reflect on these 2 elemental questions in the practice of meditation. What is your experience right now? And what does it mean to be with it, to allow it? And you might sense in your own way who you are in the absence of aversion in all its flavors. Of who you are in the absence of wanting anything, craving. Sensing who you are in the absence of anxiety. And who you are in the absence of that numbing, that sleepy, heavy, not wanting to feel quality. And who you are in the absence of doubt. Not trying to make anything happen, not trying to strive for any particular state, but just sensing what is transcendent of all these different states. And then when you're ready, you can let your breath deepen. And if you like, you can let the eyes open, or you can even rest with the eyes closed if you like. So, meditation cannot really be judged in a conventional, traditional way. There's a very powerful inquiry into what it means to be present, what it means to say yes to what arises, and the trust that what comes into your consciousness as you meditate is exactly what wants to be seen and heard, to be felt and to be allowed.
So welcome back. I hope you enjoyed that moment with Jonathan Foust. That again was part of our virtual World Yoga and Meditation Conference, where Jonathan was one of our expert speakers. Again, the title of it was Immeasurable Happiness, Unlocking the Myths of Meditation. And that is available actually through our Shop Yoga Hub. It is a session that is available for sale in that area, and we invite you to explore that if it is right for you. For any comments and suggestions or questions to Jonathan, please scroll down to the comment box below, and we will make sure that we get it over to him. He has some wonderful CDs as well at Shop Yoga Hub. Or you can give us a call too at 818-LETS-TALK. 818-LETS-TALK, and leave your name and your question, and of course your contact number or email address so that we can get back to you. Again, that's 818-LETS-TALK. This is only a piece of what we'll be bringing to you in Meditation Madness for 2014. What a name, right? Meditation Madness. Be sure to check out our new slate of shows for 2014. We have surely increased quite a number of shows and may be launching more here at YHTV. Again, my name is Christina Suzama. Have a wonderful, wonderful, blessed year coming up. Until next time, namaste. YHTV's Magical Medical Tour. Come join Dr. Glenn Woolman and Christina Suzama as they journey through the healthcare galaxy, interviewing doctors, healthcare practitioners in the attempt to share ways to achieve optimal health. Join us on yogahub.tv every Tuesday at 10:30 a.m. Pacific, 1:30 p.m. Eastern.
Breathing is a very important part of everything we do. And in the Wallman metaphor square breath, if you can imagine or see the picture of a square, in the bottom left-hand corner is an A, and then up in the left-hand corner is B, then over is C, and then at the bottom right is D. This is the metaphor square breath. If you think about it, when a person is born, the first thing that they do in life that declares that they're an individual is to take a deep breath, and that's inspiration, and we make that inspirational.